Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome back to another episode with Connect with the Quran. And today we're going to take a brief snippet shot of Surah Hud. So we are now in the Makki garden of surahs, and these first few, starting with Surah Yunus, they're starting with Alif Lam Ra, and some of them will have an added letter also. And this one it does make a pair with Surah Yunus, and it's like one long khutbah. And it is said that Surah Hud and its sisters made Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's hair go grey. There's a hadith to the effect that Abu Bakr Siddiq, if I'm not mistaken, him or some other Sahabi, they said, Rasulullah, you know what's happening? And he said, it's the surah that made it go grey. And the thing is, because this and the other surahs, specifically, I won't go into them just now, which ones they are, see if you can look them up. And I like leaving these sort of open-ended things to encourage you to have some, which are the sisters of Surah Hud, which talk about the same sort of thing in a bullet point or a nutshell or briefly, which, because in this surah also we will trace detailed history, like we said in Surah Yusuf, it was a little, in Surah Yunus, there was a bit of Musa alayhi salam and Nuh alayhi salam, one in extendedly and one less. Here it's in the flip form. And what it is that it's what those surahs did is that by talking about the people of the past, it is shaking us up of what happened time and again. So much so, bringing it back again to today, of relating to how people make everything an entertainment. So even if people died there, even if there was even Pompeii, still in Italy, at the foot of the Vesuvius, there was a volcano and these people, it's become a sight, a vision. Yes, if it brings you ibra, by all means. If it shakes you up and says, these were people who were ungodly and this finally happened and they were doing this, well, bring on your punishment, if so on and so forth. When it comes, that's what it is. But we are told by Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, where the people of Hud and those things, when they are passing by, pass by quickly. Don't stop there. Don't make it a picnic spot. Don't do these things. So by the same nature, like what has happened about the Titanic? What about the Titanic that, now for us to then extrapolate, it was because of this and because of that, we don't need to go in it. But those are not things of entertainment. Same with all these bad sports about the cockfighting, the bullfighting, the this or that. Recently was a beautiful something about how they made, how you're getting organic, you're getting green, you're doing all these beautiful things, is how they've reinvented the bullfighting game into something that you show your acrobatic techniques to avoid the bull instead of spearing the bull and, harming it. The same with the cockfight. They're all horrible things, but I don't know why in the dunya those are items of entertainment. In fact, in our deen, we don't have this concept of entertaining yourself with these kind of things. Or for that matter, your joy needs to come in your connection with Allah. Your joy needs to come on the prayer mat. And there were these beautiful, and I don't know the whole story, but how the Sahabas, the four closest Sahabas of Rasulullah, he and others, were sitting, and they all asked each other, what to you is the most beloved thing? So Ali radiallahu anhu said one thing, Uthman radiallahu anhu said another, Umar Farooq said something, Abu Bakr Siddiq, and our Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam said that for me, I love the prayer. And he said other things as well. And then so much so in this conversation, you see, this is the beauty of our deen. Then Jibreel alayhi salam was sent. He said, whether Allah sent him, he said, I've also come to tell you what I love about it. And I love bringing the message from Allah, the wahi to the prophets. So these are beautiful kind of things to know that when you are in a good gathering and when they talk about the angels are here and they cover you and they listen to you and they take your message up, this is what we need to take home from, from these. I like bringing in the idea of, when we talk about power outages, Wi-Fi, data, all these things, then we have the ADSL line, then we have a fast line, then we have 4G, 5G, all these things of how we're always upgrading to stay connected. So we need to do the same for ourselves of how to stay connected to Allah. So if Surah Hud, of these reminders of these stories, bring into your life a shake up, wake up call. And I wrote reading of the Quran, then these messages don't necessarily penetrate. So what is here is that these first 4 ayahs are essentially on the methodology of Quranic education, which Allah tells us of how to, whether it's through memorizing of the surahs, of what you need to do, what needs to be explained. So those are the kind of things that you need to be looking at. And so it's our prophet was the Nazir and the Bashir, the warner and the giver of good news. So for all of, and we know about in the Western way, we talk about the carrot and the stick, where there's, different strokes for different folks, what wakes them up. But these are all the things. So Allah also varies it. There's not a whole passage just on Akhirah or whole long passages. It keeps shifting because our heart, which is a qalb, which is always shifting. Sometimes it's in this frame and, I saw this and it made me happy. But in another day, you see the same thing and it doesn't make you happy. Whether it's a biryani, whether it's this, not the same thing will give always the same response. The responses vary in human nature. So that's what we need to really be bearing in mind. And by same thing is that 2 people within the same society, even 2 siblings, even to any of these people, within the same place, the same are listening to the same message, and yet we take home different messages. Some believe, some don't believe. So it's just watching out what is it that we are given the fitrah. We have the basic blueprint of when Allah asked, Alastu bi rabbikum qalu bala, was the response that yes, you are Rabb at ruh level. So something at a primordial, subconscious level, the sense of fitrah is there. It's just that how it's groomed. Then we have the hadith that it's only people who make their children Magian, Jew, Christian, or whatever else. But in the fitrah, and that's why I love that book, which is called Islam, the Natural Way. And truly, why is it that people come to Islam? It resonates at a deep, natural way level of the direct connection with Allah, no intercessors, you have it direct, and then also responsibility, because you can't abdicate responsibility of being given being baptized, you're washed with the blood of Christ, and then you are saved for life. It doesn't really work that way. Yes, they, in their right guided way, they had it beautiful in their book, in the Gospels and in the Injil, and how it got modified. So we, alhamdulillah, thanks to a miracle of the Quran, we've got it preserved in its best way. So yes, the first thing we do is we memorize, we read, and we rote read, and there's barakah in that as well. But imagine how much more if we can learn how the Quran teaches us how with different people you use different kind of attitudes. Don't be too harsh with a new Muslim who's just come in, and the first thing you tell him is to disconnect with his dog because they are not clean and they need to be. Yes, those are all things, but everything has to come in a gradual way. So the way the corruption that happens is precisely because you let your fitrah go by the wayside. B, you're caught into your ego and your selfishness, and no, this I want. And so the free will is used all about gratifying your inside. But we'll take it a bit further from there. But just sit with how do all these things, how are we bringing it in our lives? So look at it from that sense of where is my ego speaking up? Where am I going astray? Yes, I will say the kalima, and yet I derail in other ways. So we'll just take a pause there and then come back and use this time for thinking about these things. So after a few minutes, we'll be back. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back. We're continuing to look at Surah Hud, which is the second Makki surah in the third group of 7 groups as the Quran is divided. As one Mufassir chose to make groups of Makki and Madani surahs. Sometimes one Makki, as in Surah Fatiha, and the next Madani, or as in this case, which is the longest stretch of Makki surahs back to back, coming all the way up till Surah Mu'minun, and then the last one is Surah Nur. And there is sometimes they prefer to consider them as pairs, like we have Surah Baqarah and Al Imran and so on. They call the Zahrawain, it's from a hadith. The last 2 surahs, Surah Falaq and Surah Nas, are considered the Mu'awwidhatayn, where you ask refuge from Allah. So here we've got Surah Yunus and Surah Hud making a pair. Surah Yunus talks of something open-ended. Here in Surah Hud, and the fact that it made our Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam's hair go grey, it was because of these stories of the past people, of how people made fun of and mockery. So we did it in the past also. Joking, making fun, is one of the first steps to slide into kufr. So it does not behove a Muslim. No, we're not always designed to be serious. We're not always designed to be poker-faced and serious and worried with worry beads, or, with our tasbeehs, about worrying about the akhirah. Yes, our Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam would smile. He had a beautiful face. He had a smiling face. So that is there. He lived in the dunya. He lived with people. He enjoyed, smiling at things. But it was all so beautifully done. So this is why we need to also be looking at the surah, at the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What made him happy? What made him sad? What was the things that caused him grief? Once he was lying down and he got up and he was so angry. He said, because what is the worst thing people can do is giving false testimony. So false testimony. He repeated so often that the Sahaba said that, oh, we wish that he would not be so, because it was that serious how it was. So that's what we need to be taking home of what. And yes, you can joke, but joke on something. Like Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to a lady once she came, she said, please pray that, and she was an elderly person, that I make it to Jannah. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that, something to the effect, he said some phrase which made her despondent. So he said, you won't go into Jannah as an old person, you'll be in Jannah as a young person. That's what it was. But in between what he said, that's what it left her. Another lady came with something else, but it's on something that is not degrading, not insulting. So all these jokes, that's why, this idea of comedians, it very easily slips first into the obscene, into really horrible stuff. First we could tell jokes and, it can be funny, but really everything's taken to the nth level of disgustingness. So it falls under fuhush, it falls under rijs. So here, what we learn also is that the people that make fun of our Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam and of Allah, and that's why Allah tells us even in the Quran, don't you make fun of their idols or the things they appreciate or they worship, for fear that there will be a backlash. So we don't. In principle, we don't have that culture. We don't have that attitude. Because, and if it happens to be for other prophets or something, we revere Isa alayhi salam more than they do. We revere Musa alayhi salam more than they do. So they are very precious and dear to us. And So the idea of be careful of mockery, be careful, and this is something that ongoingly today we enjoy these fun shows and this and yes, and they're talking about the parliament or the the president or whatever, and we think it is something fine because they're in essence telling a truth, but they're also making a mockery. But we don't need to go that route. The other way, if there's been Quran burning here or there, yes, there was a beautiful message about how to say, to show their sense they talk about freedom of speech, and yet if somebody try to do something to the Torah, and you're going to be in jail, you're going to be sued, it's blasphemous. Most countries have it, you can't insult the flag. I mean, can you believe it? How more dunya minded can you be on a flag because it represents something? So if you feel your flag is your ultimate nationalistic, your goal or your whatever, and you can't insult, otherwise you get 3 years, 6 years, 5 years, whatever, imprisonment for insulting that. This is in the constitution of Western European society. And yet something somebody reveres holy, we don't believe in harming the Injil or the Torah, even in the fashion that today. We're not going to degrade them. We don't think they're as authentic as they should have been when they were first given, but it doesn't mean we're going to insult them. Whereas for them, it's freedom of speech that they can burn the Quran. Now, of course, we can protest or something, but we also need to keep in mind how, no matter what the kuffar do, any one of those previous nations, any one of what they did, ultimately Allah shows the guy who said, even God can't sink this, got sunk. Even something else, this is foolproof. I mean, why do we have inshallah in our language? By Allah's mercy, I will do this. By Allah's grace, I'll manage that. And it's time and again, and Allah's in charge. Yes, we need to defend what we revere, we need to, but if they are mocking our Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, do it in a fashion that brings them to us. It's like when you are demonstrating, students. They are demonstrating, they are whatever, for whatever the university has done, and then you're breaking your labs. Where does it make sense for you to go and destroy the labs, destroy this, destroy that? Those are assets which you benefit as a student. So if you are benefiting from those things and then you're going, so that's not the way to protest. There are other ways to protest. And I love this latest clip that I saw about showing the hypocrisy of the West. In one place it's freedom of speech, in the other, no, you can't do it because it's blasphemous. Hello, thank you. So what about you being blasphemous about us? So we need to, and in the Quran it says time and again of how you need to be on your best behavior. Hang in there, hang in there. Your sabr is going to be tested. And this is why it's so beautiful to know that even if a thorn pricks you, it's expiating you of some sins. I mean, that just makes you feel, and now it's not that I go and ask, God forbid, that I get some illness so that it can expiate my sins. No, I need to take hold of myself and first correct myself before, think of that. And those are where we need to just be mindful when we're reading the ayahs and just look at it. What is it saying it to me? Where is it? And invariably you will find that, when you are in your moment, but we need to also come to the Quran with a bit of, that's why the wudu, the right frame, and it's not just I'm rote reading, I have to read my Yasin every morning, and that's what I've done, and whether I understood anything or not, it's just a rote reading, and I get along with it. No, the whole point is to soften the heart and bring the heart on the table. And while I'm saying it, I'm the first recipient of having to hear this message time and time again, because you're there, but in your moment of glory or your moment of Eid or your moment of whatever goodness, it goes out of the window. Then suddenly you're getting offended because I had this lavish meal prepared and nobody pitched or whatever, and then I've lost the plot. It's by Allah's decree at the end of the day that what happened happened. It's by Allah's decree. And yet at that moment, it's because I was so busy making this and making that, and then they didn't pitch and they went somewhere else and they didn't come here. All these things, and then you pulled up and now you're never going to talk to them again. Where does that come from? And unfortunately, me in first place, we get hooked into these things. So if the Quran, not if, the Quran is there to design us to improve our akhlaq also, of our behavior, of our staying power, of our being totally not losing the plot. We lose it. Allah doesn't say that we're always going to be in a state of this and nothing happens. We've got a qalb and we go up and we go down. But our ability to retrieve ourselves, to pick ourselves up, should be that much more quicker and greater. And we realize, and why is it that we then say astaghfirullah and so on. And whenever a thought of the shaitan comes, you are with astaghfirullah. So with that, I will leave you on this beautiful surah. They're all beautiful, but here we will end off, and may it have been beneficial for you. And I pray that I and you are both recipients of benefit when we engage with the Quran. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.